The bride collapsed at her wedding. The letter in her purse exposed everything. Hi everyone. Before we get into today's video, I need your help. We've noticed that the channel's reach has been dropping a bit, and one of the best ways you can support us is by subscribing. It's quick, free, and helps us keep bringing you new and interesting stories. Your support means the world to us, and together, we can grow this channel. Thank you so much. Now let's get to today's story. I'm writing from a temporary account for obvious reasons, and I've changed some details to protect my anonymity. I met him in the rain. That's how every great love story should begin, isn't it? Something cinematic, something that feels written by fate rather than chance. It was April, and I was running late for a job interview, my umbrella turning inside out in the wind, my carefully straightened hair curling in the downpour. I ducked into a coffee shop to wait out the worst of it, and there he was, sitting by the window with a book and a half-empty cup. He looked up when I stumbled in, dripping and frustrated, and he smiled. Not a polite smile or a pitying one, but something warm and genuine that made my annoyance evaporate. "Rough day?" he asked. "You could say that." I tried to wring out my jacket without making a bigger mess. "Here." He stood and gestured to the chair across from him. "Sit. I'll get you something hot. Coffee? Tea?" I should have said no. I was late, soaked, stressed. But something about his eyes, deep brown, kind, with laugh lines at the corners, made me say yes. His name was Ethan Cole. He worked in software development, loved old books and terrible jokes, and had a laugh that made other people want to laugh too. We talked until the rain stopped, and then we kept talking. I missed my interview entirely and didn't care. "I feel like I know you," he said at one point, looking at me with an intensity that should have felt uncomfortable, but didn't. Is that a terrible line? It feels like a terrible line. "It's terrible," I agreed, smiling, "but I feel it too." We exchanged numbers. He texted me before I even got home. Coffee shops and rainstorms might be my new favorite combination. We had our first official date 3 days later, then another, then another. Within a month, we were inseparable. Within 3 months, he'd met my parents, and I'd met his mother. His father had passed away years before, and it was just the two of them, Elena and Ethan, close in that way only single parents and their children can be. Elena was elegant and reserved, with silver-streaked dark hair and the same warm brown eyes as her son. She welcomed me kindly but carefully, and I sensed she was protective of Ethan, cautious about who might break his heart. I understood. I was an only child too, raised by a single mother after my father left when I was young. Ethan and I joked that we were mirror images, two people shaped by similar circumstances, finding each other in a city of millions. "What are the odds?" he'd say, holding my hand as we walked through the park. "That we'd both end up in the same coffee shop, on the same rainy day, at exactly the right moment. Maybe it's fate," I'd reply, only half joking. Maybe it is. Our relationship felt easy in a way nothing else in my life ever had. We fit. We understood each other's silences, finished each other's sentences, laughed at the same obscure references. My mother adored him. His mother warmed to me over time, though she remained somewhat distant, polite, kind, but with a sadness in her eyes I couldn't quite place. "She's been through a lot," Ethan explained once. "My father's death hit her hard. She's never really recovered. I think she's afraid of losing anyone else she loves." I squeezed his hand. "I'm not going anywhere." "Promise?" "Promise." He proposed on a beach at sunset because he was romantic and believed in grand gestures. He got down on one knee in the sand, pulled out a ring that had belonged to his grandmother, and said, "I've been looking for you my whole life. Will you marry me?" I said yes before he finished the question. The engagement period was a blur of happiness. We set the date for October, 6 months away, enough time to plan, but not so long that we'd drive ourselves crazy with details. My mother threw herself into wedding preparations with enthusiasm, helping me choose flowers and decorations, and debate between salmon and chicken for the main course. Elena participated too, though more quietly, offering suggestions and writing checks, but always with that shadow behind her smile. "Are you okay?" I asked her once, during a cake tasting where she seemed particularly withdrawn. "Of course, dear." She patted my hand. "Just emotional. You know how mothers get." I didn't push. I assumed she was sad about Ethan growing up, moving on, starting his own family. Wasn't that what all mothers felt? The weeks flew by. Dress fittings, venue confirmations, invitation addressing, seating charts, 100 small decisions that somehow felt monumentally important. Ethan and I moved into an apartment together, combining our lives, learning each other's domestic habits. He left coffee cups everywhere. I was obsessive about making the bed. He sang off-key in the shower. I fell asleep watching television. Perfect imperfections that made us real. "I can't believe this is actually happening," I told him one night, curled up on the couch with wedding magazines scattered around us. "Believe it." He kissed my forehead. "In 3 months, you'll be stuck with me forever." 3 months, I echoed, feeling a flutter of joy and nerves. Forever. The week before the wedding, Elena invited me to lunch, just the two of us. We met at a quiet bistro downtown, and she seemed agitated, stirring her tea compulsively, barely touching her food. "Are you feeling all right?" I asked. "There's something I need to tell you." She looked up, and her eyes were filled with tears. My stomach dropped. "What is it? Is it Ethan? Is he sick?" No, nothing like that." She took a shaky breath. "It's about the past, about things I've done, decisions I made. I need you to understand." Her phone rang, cutting her off. She glanced at it, grimaced. "I'm sorry, I have to take this. It's urgent." She stepped away, leaving me sitting there with half-formed dread curling in my chest. When she returned 10 minutes later, she looked even more distressed. "I have to go. Emergency at work. We'll talk after the wedding, I promise. There's time." But there wasn't time. That was the last real conversation we had before everything fell apart. The final days before the wedding passed, in a chaos of last-minute details and mounting excitement. My bridesmaids threw me a small party. Ethan's friends took him out for a bachelor night that ended with him calling me at midnight to say he loved me. My mother cried over how beautiful my dress was. Elena sent flowers with a card that read simply, "I'm so sorry." Sorry for what? I wondered, but dismissed it as pre-wedding emotion. The night before the ceremony, I lay awake in my childhood bedroom. Tradition said we shouldn't see each other before the wedding, and felt a strange unease. Nothing specific, just a sense that something was off, like a note played wrong in a familiar song. I told myself it was normal, just pre-wedding jitters, and eventually fell into restless sleep. I dreamed of my father, which was odd because I rarely thought about him. In the dream, he was trying to tell me something important, but I couldn't hear him over the sound of rain. When I woke, my pillow was damp, and I realized I'd been crying in my sleep. My mother found me sitting at the kitchen table at dawn, staring into a cup of tea. "Cold feet?" she asked gently. "No, I love him. I've never been more sure of anything." "Then what is it?" "Nah, I don't know, just a feeling, like something's about to change." She smiled. "Something is about to change. You're getting married. That's a huge change, sweetheart. But it's a good one." I nodded and let her words comfort me. She was right. This was just normal nervousness. By tomorrow, I'd be Mrs. Cole, and everything would be perfect. The morning of the wedding was beautiful. October sunshine, crisp air, leaves turning gold and scarlet. The venue was a restored barn on the outskirts of the city, decorated with white roses and fairy lights. My bridesmaids helped me into my dress ivory lace with a long train, exactly what I'd dreamed of, and fussed over my hair and makeup. "You look like a princess," my best friend Sarah said, tearing up. I looked at myself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. Radiant, happy, on the edge of everything I'd ever wanted. My mother came in as I was putting on my grandmother's pearl necklace. She stopped in the doorway, her hand flying to her mouth. "Oh, sweetheart." She was crying, of course. "You're perfect." She helped me with my veil, her hands shaking slightly. As she adjusted the delicate fabric, she paused. "Are you happy?" she asked quietly. "Completely." She kissed my cheek. "Then that's all that matters." The ceremony was scheduled for 4 o'clock. At 3, I stood in the bridal suite with my bouquet of white roses, listening to the string quartet warming up, hearing guests arriving and finding their seats. My heart was racing, but with excitement, not fear. Sarah poked her head in. 5 minutes, you ready?" "So ready." As we lined up for the processional, I noticed Elna standing near the entrance to the ceremony space. She looked pale, almost ill, clutching her purse like a lifeline. When she saw me, something crossed her face. Anguish, maybe, or resignation. "Are you okay?" I mouthed. She nodded, but tears were streaming down her face. I assumed they were happy tears, mother of the groom emotion, and turned my attention to the doors that were about to open. The music changed. The processional began. My bridesmaids walked down the aisle one by one. Then it was my turn. My mother took my arm, and together we stepped through the doors. The room was full of people I loved, all standing, all smiling, but I only saw Ethan. He stood at the altar in his black suit, looking at me like I was the only thing in the world that mattered, and I felt my heart expand with so much love, I thought it might burst. The walk down the aisle felt both endless and too short. When I reached him, my mother kissed my cheek, placed my hand in his, and stepped back. His hand was warm, steady. He mouthed, "You're beautiful," and I mouthed back, "I love you." The officiant began. The familiar words washed over us, dearly beloved, gathered here today, sacred union. And I floated on them, barely hearing, just feeling the rightness of this moment. If anyone here has reason why these two should not be joined in marriage, speak now or forever hold your peace. The traditional pause. No one ever speaks during this part. It's just ceremony, formality, ancient tradition. But I heard a sound, a choked sob from somewhere behind me. Elena. I turned slightly, saw her standing rigid in the front row, her face twisted in agony. She was shaking her head slightly, her mouth moving like she was trying to speak but couldn't. "Elna?" Ethan said, concerned. "Mom, are you okay?" She shook her head more violently. Her purse fell from her hands, spilling its contents across the floor. An usher hurried over to help her collect her things. "I'm fine," she gasped. "Please continue, I'm sorry." The officiant, after a moment's hesitation, continued. Then by the power vested in me, and that's when the world tilted. I felt it start as a ringing in my ears. Then my vision blurred at the edges. The room suddenly felt too hot, too bright, too loud. I tried to focus on Ethan's face, but it kept sliding in and out of focus. "Are you okay?" he asked, and his voice sounded far away, underwater. I tried to answer, but my tongue felt thick. The floor was moving. Or I was moving. No, falling. I was falling. The last thing I remember clearly is Ethan's arms catching me, someone screaming, and the distant sound of my bouquet hitting the floor. When I came to, I was lying on a couch in what I later learned was the venue's bridal suite. Faces swam above me, my mother, a paramedic, Sarah. Everything felt distant and strange, like I was watching a movie of my own life. "Just breathe," the paramedic was saying. "You fainted." It happens. Wedding day stress, tight dress, probably didn't eat enough. Your vitals are fine. But I didn't feel fine. I felt like something fundamental had broken, though I couldn't name what. "Ethan," I managed. "He's right here," my mother said, and he appeared in my line of vision, his face pale and frightened. "I'm okay," I told him. "I'm sorry. I ruined everything." "You didn't ruin anything," he said fiercely. "You just scared me to death. Don't do that again. I tried to smile. The paramedic was packing up his equipment, satisfied I wasn't in medical danger. My mother was fussing with my dress, which had gotten twisted when I fell. Sarah was bringing me water. And then someone I never learned who said, "Is this yours?" and held up an envelope. It was cream-colored, expensive paper, sealed with wax. On the front, in elegant handwriting, "For Miss Sarah Morrison, to be opened before the wedding." That was my name. My maiden name. The one I was about to change. "Where did you find that?" my mother asked sharply. "It fell out of Mrs. Cole's purse when she dropped it. I thought it might be important." Silence fell over the room like a heavy curtain. Everyone was looking at the envelope, then at me, then at each other. "Elena's purse?" Ethan said slowly. I sat up, though my head still felt light. "Let me see it." Sarah brought it to me. My hands shook as I took it. The wax seal was unbroken. Whatever was inside, Elena had wanted me to read it before marrying her son, but something had stopped her from giving it to me. "Maybe you should wait," my mother said quietly, "until you're feeling better." But I was already breaking the seal, unfolding the thick paper inside. The handwriting was Elena's. I recognized it from birthday cards and notes she'd left on our refrigerator. I read the first line, and the world stopped. "My dearest Sarah, by the time you read this, you may already hate me. You will certainly never forgive me. But I must tell you the truth, even if it destroys everything. You cannot marry Ethan. He is your half-brother." The letter fell from my hands. Someone picked it up. I heard voices, but they were distant, muffled. I was underwater again, drowning in words that couldn't be real. Ethan grabbed the letter, read it, his face going from confused to horrified. My mother read over his shoulder and made a sound like a wounded animal. Sarah was crying. The paramedic was asking if I needed oxygen, but all I could do was stare at Elena, who had appeared in the doorway, her face a mask of guilt and grief. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "I'm so, so sorry." The letter told a story I couldn't have imagined in my worst nightmares. 28 years ago, Elena had gotten pregnant in college. The father was a man she'd had a brief relationship with, a man who already had a family, a wife, and a young daughter. When Elena told him about the pregnancy, he panicked. He was married, established, had too much to lose. He gave Elena money and disappeared. Elena, young and terrified and alone, carried the pregnancy to term but gave the baby up for adoption. A closed adoption, one where she'd never know what happened to her daughter, where the child would never know her birth mother's identity. That daughter was me. The man who got Elena pregnant was my father, the same man who raised me for my first 7 years before leaving my mother and me. He'd had an affair with Elena before I was born, gotten her pregnant, then gone back to his wife and pretended it never happened. When he left us years later, my mother never told me about his other family, his other child. She only told me he was gone and we were better off without him. And Elena never knew that her daughter, the one she gave up, was being raised by the same man who had abandoned her, until it was too late. Until her son fell in love with his half-sister. "I didn't know," Elena sobbed, as the full weight of the revelation settled over the room. "I swear I didn't know. Not until 2 weeks ago, when I was going through old papers and found the adoption records. I saw your mother's name listed as the adoptive parent. I saw your birth date, and I knew." She had tried to tell me at lunch. She had been carrying that envelope, trying to find the courage to destroy both our lives with the truth. But she'd waited too long, and now here we were at the altar, moments from making a marriage that could never be. The room exploded into chaos. Ethan was shouting, though I couldn't process his words. My mother was crying so hard she couldn't breathe. Guests were trying to understand what was happening, rumors spreading like wildfire through the venue. And I sat there in my wedding dress, holding my wilted bouquet, as my entire life collapsed. The wedding was canceled. Obviously. There was no ceremony, no reception, no first dance or cake cutting or bouquet toss. Just shocked guests being ushered out, deposits lost, a lifetime of dreams evaporating like morning dew. Ethan and I sat in the empty ceremony space long after everyone else had left. The roses were already wilting in the October heat. The fairy lights looked sad in the fading daylight. "I don't understand," he kept saying. "How? How is this possible?" "I don't know." "Oh, we love each other." "I know. That doesn't just go away." "No," I agreed. "It doesn't. But it had to. There was no universe in which we could be together, no reality where this worked. We were siblings. Half-siblings, yes, but still bound by blood in a way that made romance impossible, illegal, unthinkable. "I should have felt it," I said. "Shouldn't I have felt it? That you were my brother?" "We're not really brother and sister," he argued desperately. "We didn't grow up together. We don't have any memories or shared experiences. We're just two people who happen to share some DNA. It doesn't work that way." "Why not?" "Because it doesn't." I stood, my dress suddenly feeling like a costume, a mockery of what should have been. "I need to go." "Sarah, don't." I held up my hand. "Please don't. I can't hear your voice right now. I can't look at you right now. I just need to not exist for a while." I left him sitting there surrounded by wedding decorations that now felt like funeral flowers. The weeks that followed were the darkest of my life. I moved back in with my mother, who aged 10 years in 10 days. Elena tried to reach out multiple times, but I couldn't speak to her. Every time I saw her number, I felt rage and grief and a complicated tangle of emotions I had no name for. She had given me up. She had chosen not to be my mother. And then, through some cosmic cruelty, I had fallen in love with her son. Ethan called and texted constantly at first. "We can figure this out," his messages said. "This doesn't have to end everything. Please talk to me." But what was there to say? We'd crossed a line we couldn't uncross, built a relationship on a foundation that had crumbled. There was no path forward that didn't lead to more pain. I stopped answering. Eventually, he stopped asking. My mother and I talked, finally, about my father. She told me everything, his affair with Elena, how he'd lied about it, how he'd disappeared from Elena's life, and then, years later, from ours. How she'd never known about the baby Elena gave up, never suspected that somewhere out there I had a brother I might meet one day. "I should have told you," she said through tears. "About his cheating, about what kind of man he was. Maybe then you would have been more careful, or fate wouldn't have been so cruel." "You couldn't have known," I told her, though I felt hollow saying it. No one could have known. But there were signs, I realized, looking back. Small things I'd dismissed or ignored. The way Elena sometimes looked at me with inexplicable sadness. The way Ethan and I had the same habit of rubbing our left eyebrow when thinking. The way we both took our coffee the same weird way, with cinnamon and too much cream. The feeling we'd had from the very beginning. That sense of recognition, of knowing each other. We had known each other. We were family. We just didn't realize what kind. I found myself thinking about fate, about whether some cosmic force had tried to warn me. Those dreams about my father, the unease I'd felt, Elena's tearful face, the letter that had almost been delivered too late. Had the universe been screaming at me to stop, and I'd just been too in love to listen? 3 months after the wedding that never was, I moved to a different city. I needed distance, space, a place where I didn't see memories of Ethan on every corner. My mother supported the move, even though it meant being alone again. We both needed to heal, and sometimes healing requires solitude. I got a job, found an apartment, started building a new life from the ruins of the old one. I stopped checking Ethan's social media. I stopped wondering if he'd moved on. I focused on surviving each day, then each week, then each month. Slowly, painfully, I began to feel like a person again instead of just a wound. A year after the collapse, I received a letter. Not from Ethan, from Elena. I almost threw it away unopened, but something stopped me. Maybe curiosity. Maybe the sense that I needed closure. Maybe just the fact that, despite everything, she was my mother. My biological mother. That truth didn't change just because I hated it. The letter was long, written in her elegant script, full of apologies and explanations and grief. She told me about being young and pregnant and terrified, about giving me up because she thought it was best for everyone, about searching for me for years afterward, then forcing herself to stop because the adoption was closed and she had no right. About seeing me for the first time when Ethan brought me home and feeling something she couldn't name. Recognition, maybe, or just wishful thinking. I convinced myself I was imagining it, she wrote, that my desperate hope to find my daughter was making me see connections that weren't there. By the time I knew for certain, you and Ethan were already deeply in love. I told myself maybe it didn't matter. Maybe the adoption had somehow made it okay. I know how foolish that sounds now. She ended the letter with, I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I want you to know that giving you up was the hardest thing I ever did. And finding you again, only to lose you like this, is even harder. You deserved better than this. You deserved the truth before it could hurt you. I'm sorry I was too weak to give it to you in time. I read that letter 3 times, crying each time, before I finally wrote back. My reply was short. I'm not ready to forgive you yet. Maybe I never will be. But I understand that you tried. I understand that you're suffering too. Maybe someday we can talk. Just not now. Not yet. It wasn't absolution, but it was something. A thread connecting us, however thin. 2 years after the wedding, I was working at a bookstore when I saw him. Ethan was standing in the poetry section, older looking, with the beard he'd always talked about growing but never had. He looked good. Tired, maybe, but good. Our eyes met across the store, and everything I'd carefully built, the walls, the distance, the new life, threatened to crumble. He walked over slowly, like approaching a wild animal that might bolt. Hi, he said. Hi. You look well. So do you. Silence stretched between us, heavy with everything we couldn't say. I think about you, he said finally. All the time. I know I shouldn't, but I do. I know. Do you hate me? I considered the question. No. I don't hate you. I hate what happened. I hate that the universe played this horrible joke on us. But I don't hate you. I miss you, he whispered. I miss you too. The truth hurt coming out. Every day. But missing someone doesn't mean we can be together. We could have been so happy. We were happy. For a while we were so happy. He smiled sadly. Yeah, we were. Are you doing okay? I asked. Really okay? Getting there. Therapy helps. Time helps. Having to helps. He paused. Mom asks about you sometimes. She wants to know if you're all right. Tell her I am. Tell her I'm working on it. We stood there a moment longer. 2 people who loved each other but couldn't. 2 halves of a broken whole that could never be put back together. I should go, he said finally. Yeah. He turned to leave, then stopped. Sarah? For what it's worth, I'm glad I met you. Even knowing how it ended, I wouldn't change meeting you. You were the best thing that ever happened to me. My throat closed up. You were the best thing that happened to me, too. He left, and I stood there in the poetry section, crying silently, mourning what we'd been and what we could never be. 5 years after the wedding, I wrote a letter, not to Ethan, but to Elena. Dear Elena, it began, I'm ready to talk now, if you are. I don't know what our relationship can be, or should be. We can't be mother and daughter. That ship sailed 28 years ago. But maybe we can be something else. Maybe we can be 2 people who share a history, a son and a love, and a tragedy neither of us wanted. She replied immediately. We met for coffee in a neutral city, neither of us wanting the ghosts of hometown memories. She looked older, but also lighter, like she'd finally set down a burden she'd been carrying for decades. We talked for hours about the past, about Ethan, about forgiveness and fate, and whether some wounds ever fully heal. I see him sometimes, she told me. He's doing well. He's in therapy still, working through everything. He hasn't dated anyone seriously. I don't think he's ready. Neither am I admitted. Do you think you ever will be? Ready, I mean. I don't know. How do you trust fate again after it betrays you like this? She smiled sadly. You don't trust fate. You trust yourself. You learn that you're strong enough to survive what you thought would destroy you. It wasn't the comfort I wanted, but it was the truth I needed. We see each other occasionally now, Elena and I. Awkward coffees, careful conversations, a relationship being built piece by piece. She tells me stories about being pregnant with me, about the adoption, about the life she imagined for me. I tell her about growing up, about my mother, my real mother, the one who raised me, about the person I've become. We're not close. We may never be. But we're something, and that's more than I expected. Ethan, I haven't seen since that day in the bookstore. I heard through Elena that he moved to the West Coast, started over fresh, where no one knew his story. I hope he's happy. I hope he's found peace. I hope he's forgotten me, even though I haven't forgotten him. Some people say this story is about fate being cruel. Others say it's about the importance of truth. I think it's about something else entirely, about how love doesn't always mean together, about how sometimes the right person appears at the wrong time, or in the wrong relationship, or under the wrong circumstances. The dress I wore, or almost wore, is in a box in my closet. I can't bear to get rid of it, but I can't look at it either. It's both a memory of the happiest I've ever been and a reminder of the worst pain I've ever felt. I'm 33 now, single, building a life that looks nothing like what I imagined at 28. Some days are good. Some days I still wake up aching for what I lost. But I'm here. I survived. And somehow, against all odds, I'm finding ways to be happy again. Not the happiness I thought I'd have married, settled, building a life with the man I loved. But a different kind. Quieter, maybe, more careful, hard-won. Last week, I started writing our story. Not for publication, not for anyone else. Just for me. A way of processing, of putting down the weight of what happened and walking away lighter. The title is still this: The Bride Collapsed at Her Wedding. But I'm thinking of changing it. Maybe to The Bride Survived Her Wedding. Because that's the real story, isn't it? Not the collapse, but what came after. Not the ending, but the endurance. I collapsed at my wedding. The letter in my purse exposed a truth that destroyed everything I thought I knew. But I got back up. I survived the truth. And I'm still here, still standing, still finding reasons to hope, even when hope feels foolish. That's not the ending I wanted. But maybe it's the ending I needed. They say time heals all wounds. I don't know if that's true, but time does teach you to carry the wounds differently, to live with the scars, to find meaning in the pain. I loved my brother. I didn't know he was my brother. The universe played a cruel joke, and we were the punchline. But we survived it, both of us. We're out there somewhere, living separate lives, carrying the same impossible memory. And maybe that's enough. Maybe survival is its own kind of victory.